All right, so we're going deep on low code today, specifically with this Pega platform. You sent over some stuff from Pega Academy, and honestly, some of it kind of sounds like, well, too good to be true, like software that writes your software. Really?
Yeah, it's a bold claim, but the idea is intriguing, right? How do we get more people building software? Not just, the hardcore coders. And that's where this whole low-code thing comes in.
I see. Yeah, Pega Academy actually starts with this definition of low code from Forrester, and they talk about using visual tools instead of, actually writing code. So how does Pega actually pull that off? How do they go from like dragging and dropping to a real application?
Okay, so picture this. You're dragging and dropping, designing these workflows, all visually, no code. And Pega's platform in the background is taking all that and turning it into the actual code. That makes the app run.
Okay, but I'm thinking like those simple website builders, where you stuck with a few templates. Does that mean low code can only make like basic apps?
That's a common misconception. And Pega actually, they address this straight on. Their platform goes way beyond, just basic stuff. Like there's this example they give, a marketing team. They start with just a basic spreadsheet for tracking requests. But with Pega's tools, they turn that spreadsheet into a whole system, like with email integration, a full web interface. They even build in reporting and SLAs. It's pretty impressive.
That's a good point. And thinking about that marketing team, they need to get that application in front of people on different devices, right?
Exactly. That's where the omnichannel thing comes into play. You build the application once, and then Pega makes it work seamlessly on web pages, mobile apps, even
So
chatbots.
no matter how your user's accessing it, it's the same experience. I like that. But let's be real, data lives everywhere. So how does Pega deal with connecting to all these different systems a company might already have?
Yeah, immigration can be a nightmare, but Pega tries to make it as painless as possible. They have this visual approach to connecting with other systems, so you can pull in data and map it into your Pega application. It's like drawing lines between systems instead of writing tons of code.
So far, we've been talking about citizen developers, people who aren't necessarily coding experts, but is low code only for non-programmers? Like, what about the experienced developers?
Pega actually sees their platform as a win for both. Citizen developers can build functional apps quickly, but then the pro devs, they can use Pega's tools to build much more complex applications, and they can do it way faster.
And for those more complex builds, Pega has these things called studios.
Right, think of them as workspaces within Pega, specifically for the pro devs. They can build custom solutions in the studios, or tackle those really tricky problems. And then the cool part, they can expose those solutions as visual components that anyone else can use.
So it's like building with pre-made blocks. Smart. Okay, so we've got visual development, omni-channel capabilities, integration tools. It's a lot to process. But then there's this whole other layer, Pega Gen AI, that can like generate entire applications. What is that all about?
So Pega Gen AI, it's this whole suite of AI-powered tools designed to make development even faster and more intuitive. You can use Gen AI Autopilot to create a functional app just by describing what you need, or use Gen AI Blueprint to visually model your business processes in minutes.
That's a lot of power. What are the implications of that kind of automation?
Yeah, that's a huge question. It brings up some important considerations about the future of work and the role of AI. But before we get into all that, let's dig a little deeper into how these Pega AI tools actually work.
All right, sounds like a great place to pick up in part two, so stick with us as we keep going deeper into this Pega low-code platform. Welcome back to our deep dive on Pega's low-code platform. Before the break, we were starting to talk about AI tools, tools that can pretty much build apps for you.
Yeah, it's pretty game-changing stuff. And Pega Gen AI, it goes beyond just like generating code. It's more about understanding what you're trying to do, the intent and context. Like with Gen AI Autopilot, you can just describe what you need. Say you need an app to track customer service requests. And the AI will actually build a working prototype with the interface and workflows and everything.
So it's not just about speed, it's about closing that gap between what a business user wants and what a developer needs to know to actually build it.
Exactly. And then you've got Gen AI Blueprint. That helps you visually map out complex business processes. Think of it like a flowchart, but with AI. AI that can suggest best practices and make sure the process is optimized for your specific goals.
Sounds super efficient, but is there a downside to that level of automation? What about, jobs?
That's a valid concern. It comes up a lot with AI. But Pega's perspective is that these tools, they're designed to help people, not replace them. By automating those repetitive tasks, it frees up developers so they can focus on more strategic work, like problem solving and innovation.
So it's more about shifting roles, not eliminating them.
right?
Okay, that makes sense. Now, Pega talks a lot about case management. I'm not really sure what that means in this context.
So it's a way of managing complex processes with lots of steps and different people and systems involved. Think about a loan application. Traditionally, that might involve a lot of manual steps, paperwork, delays.
Oh, yeah, I've been there, waiting forever just to hear back.
Exactly. But with Pega's platform and their case management features, you can automate a lot of that. The application moves from one stage to the next automatically. It gathers data from different sources, makes decisions based on predefined rules, even tracks progress in real time.
So instead of emails and phone calls going back and forth, everything's streamlined and tracked in one system.
That's the idea.
Interesting. So we've got visual development, AI tools, case management capabilities. Peg is really pushing the envelope here. But they're not the only ones doing low code, right?
Oh, definitely not. Low code is a hot space right now. There are lots of different platforms and approaches out there.
So what makes Pega different? What sets their platform apart?
One of the big things is their focus on enterprise-grade applications. They've built their platform with scalability in mind, security, robustness. That's super important for large organizations that really rely on their software.
So it's not just about building apps quickly, it's about building apps that can handle the needs of big companies.
Exactly. And another thing that sets Pega apart is their deep expertise in specific industries, like financial services, healthcare, insurance. They have pre-built solutions and templates for those industries.
So if I'm a bank and I want to streamline my loan approval process, I could just use a Pega solution right out of the box.
You could. It's like getting a head start instead of building everything from scratch. And because it's still low code, you still have the flexibility to customize it.
Sounds like a pretty good deal. But no technology's perfect, right? What are some of the downsides or challenges with a platform like Pega?
That's a great question. It's important to be aware of the potential drawbacks. One thing that comes up is vendor lock-in.
Meaning you're stuck with Pega, and it's hard to switch to something else if you need to.
Right, when you choose a low-code platform, you're buying into their whole ecosystem, their tools, their way of doing things, and that can make it hard to switch later on.
So you really need to think about your long-term needs before you commit to any platform. What about other challenges?
Another concern is scalability. Low-code is great for building apps quickly, but it might not be the best choice for every application, especially applications that need to handle huge amounts of data or really complex transactions.
So for those really demanding enterprise-level apps, traditional coding might still be the way to go.
It could be. And then there's security. When you're using a low-code platform, you're trusting the vendor to keep your application secure. So it's really important to choose a vendor with a good track record.
Yeah, especially if you're dealing with sensitive data.
Absolutely. And then finally, there's customization. Low-code platforms offer a lot of flexibility, but they might not always allow for the level of customization you need.
So you might hit a wall if you need to build something really unique.
Right.
So it seems like there's a trade-off between the speed and ease of low code and the flexibility and control of traditional coding.
Exactly. And the best approach will depend on the situation.
Well, we've covered a lot, from the potential of low code to the potential challenges, but there's still this big question, does this mean the end of traditional coding?
That's the million-dollar question. It's something people debate a lot. Some think low code will eventually replace traditional coding. Others say there will always be a need for skilled developers, especially for complex and custom solutions.
So where does Pega stand on this?
Pega sees low code as a powerful tool. It can definitely speed up development, but it's not meant to replace skilled developers entirely.
So it's not an either-or thing.
Right.
It's about finding the right balance.
Exactly. Low code can empower citizen developers, and professional developers can focus on the more complex stuff, the infrastructure, the frameworks, the components that require deeper technical skills.
So it's more inclusive, more collaborative. But before we get too carried away with this vision of citizen developers and AI, let's step back for a second. What are the long-term implications of this shift toward low code?
That's a good point. We talked about jobs, but there are broader societal implications too. How will this change the way we interact with technology? Will it lead to more innovation? Or will it create new challenges?
Those are some big questions, and I don't know if we have all the answers yet, but it's a conversation we need to be having.
Definitely.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground. I think it's time for a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Pega's low-code platform with some final thoughts and takeaways. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring Pega's low-code platform, and we've covered a lot. visual development AI tools. You even talked about some of the, potential benefits and challenges.
Yeah, it's been a pretty fascinating look at how low-code is really changing the game, empowering a new generation of developers, changing how we think about building software. Right, and before the break, we were starting to get into some of the bigger questions, like the broader societal implications of all this.
Yeah, those are the conversations we need to be having more and more these days. Like one promise of low code is that it will democratize software development, make it accessible to more people. But what does that actually look like? You know?
Yeah, does that mean anyone can just become a developer, even if they don't have the traditional background or education?
It's a good question. I mean, low-code tools definitely make it easier to get started, but you still need some level of technical understanding, problem-solving skills.
So it's not as simple as just dragging and dropping.
Probably not for most applications. But the point is that low-code gives people more power, even if they don't have, hardcore coding skills.
So it's less about replacing traditional developers and more about expanding the pool of potential developers.
Exactly. It's about creating a more diverse tech ecosystem.
That sounds pretty positive, but are there potential downsides to all this?
Well, there are always risks with new technology. One concern is that you might see a lot of, poorly designed applications or insecure applications.
Yeah, that makes sense. If everyone's suddenly building software without the proper training.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have clear guidelines, best practices, security standards.
Especially as more companies start using low code. What about jobs? If low code can automate so much, will it put developers out of work?
It's a valid concern. It comes up a lot with automation in general. But a lot of experts actually believe that low code will create new opportunities.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, as these platforms become more sophisticated, you're going to need people who can build and maintain them, people who can create custom components, integrate with other systems.
So it's not just about building apps on the platform, it's about building the platform itself.
Exactly. And that takes a lot of technical skill.
So maybe instead of replacing developers, low code will elevate their role.
That's the idea.
Interesting. And of course, technology is always evolving. Just as low code is disrupting traditional coding, something else might come along and disrupt low code.
Right? Things change fast.
So what does all this mean for our listeners? Should they be jumping on the low code bandwagon?
I'd say approach it with, cautious optimism, explore the possibilities, try out different platforms, but don't think of it as like a magic solution.
Right. Technology is just a tool. We have to use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into low-code development with Pega.
My pleasure.
That's all for this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning.